Hey everyone, welcome back to another Godzilla Battleline video, and today we're going over the 5-cost flyer meta deck. Try saying that 3 times fast, alright? So, what I got for you today is another one of our meta breakdown guides. You guys really seem to like the Bomb Squad one, so I fast-tracked up the 5-cost flyer for you guys, just because I think if we're going to go through this series, we might as well for the first two knock out the most oppressive of all of the meta archetypes, and I think that I think that the 5-cost flyer meta and the Bomb Squad are probably the two best decks. Lately, I think the Bomb Squads are more impactful as a deck archetype. However, the 5-cost flyers have some of the most used units in any decks ever in Battleline. Right? Batra, Leo, Fire Ultraman, Anguirus, right? Like, Anguirus not a flyer, but I put him on here. I'm getting ahead of myself with the suggestions already. All very notable characters throughout Battleline's history, very important to most competitive decks. I would say that, Bomb Squad as an archetype is the best archetype, but the 5-cost flyers, just that, identification of a character, that this is a 5-cost flyer, some of the most important units in Battleline are in that category. So we're going to break down this entire deck and do a discussion on what I think the backbone of the deck is, what I think you can put in, and just overall my feelings about the 5-cost flyers. So for those of you who are, for some reason, not in the know, maybe you just started the game, the 5-cost flyers is generally considered the best group of characters in the game. You have Mothra Leo, insane damage, very good health. Batra, great damage boost, pretty good health, pretty good damage. Fire decent stats, insane healing capabilities. These units have seen play in the meta of Battleline for well over the last year. Batra has been a staple of competitive decks for, at this point, like a year and a half, right? As soon as Leo got buffed last year, I don't remember when it was, like April maybe or May, he started seeing a lot of play. Fire got a change in May that made him instantly meta with the On Death evolution, so they've been ruling the game for months and months and months. Batra for years, right? So they're huge. They're a very big part of Battleline, and unfortunately, I don't think they're going anywhere. The Bomb Squad's kind of getting rid of them, but I don't think that you won't see a competitive deck with at least one or two of these characters in them. Now, for the deck itself, I have the backbone obviously listed on the top. We have, I was going to say Batra Leo, Mothra Leo, Batra, and Fire Rodan, which we've talked about now a little bit. I do not think you need a deck with all of them, and I certainly don't think you need a deck comprised entirely of 5-cost flyers. That said, the deck I'm using in the video has Ultraman in it as well, in addition to the 3 that you see above. I don't think this is an optimal deck either. I just wanted to showcase a bunch of the flyers and what they could do. So let's start with the leader, who I think the best leader is for this deck, and I think it's G89. There are some leaders that specifically help with flyers, like Fire but then again, Fire you probably want to use him on the field. I think Batra as well helps with flyers. Off the top of my head, I don't remember. We're probably going to want to use him on the field. So just all around a good leader, G89 with that ability that gives 5-cost units the 50% damage up, or the 5-cost and higher units the 50% damage up. You'll buff everyone on this team. You'll buff all the important characters on this team. So he's obviously a no-brainer. And then in today's meta with the Bomb Squad, I think Ultima's probably a good leader as well. If you don't kill one of the Bomb Squad members, Ultima's going to be able to hit them from far away so that they explode before they reach your leader. I like that a lot. You don't need him in the deck. I just think for this particular meta that we're in, when this video goes live, he's probably a really good option. Let's talk about the flyers themselves, the top 3. Mothra Leo is fantastic, huge damage. You can even see my opponent here isn't using a 5-cost flyer deck specifically, but they are using a combination of the 5-cost flyers, right? So it's not just like I'm being crazy telling you like they're really good and they can fit in anywhere. You really don't even need to build a deck consisting of 5-cost flyers. They fit everywhere. And my deck that I personally use in ranked is a combination of the Bomb Squad and the flyers. I have Burning and GMK in my deck, and the new Evangelion Unit 0, and then I have Batra and I have Mothra Leo. And just the combination of them is dominating, right? It's crazy. So the 5-cost flyers, really at the end of the day, especially Batra and Fire their meta-ness, I guess, is not because their stats are overwhelming. It's for what extra they provide to your team. And you can see that with the difference in like Mega Gearus. Mega Gearus is extremely tanky. She's also a 5-cost flyer. Why do people run Rodan over Mega Gearus? Well, Mega Gearus has a great defensive slow, but on offense, she can't heal. She doesn't get the damage up. Batra and Fire Rodan are healing and giving damage up, right? So it's the extra effects from the 5-cost flyers that is really what puts them over the edge. For the cost that it is to get them on the field, you get amazing results. Batra is giving a 30% damage up. Fire Rodan is doing crazy heals. Mothra Leo is hitting for a ridiculous amount of damage. And if you've been playing the game for a really long time, I'm talking about since the start, you'll remember that really early on, King Caesar was a really important character in Battleline to have because his rush damage was so potent, and he was not meta defining, but a lot of the meta units at the time were evolutions, and Caesar was the go-to to eliminate them, and Mothra Leo was not. But then when Mothra Leo had his stats brought up, he totally replaced King Caesar. King Caesar hasn't really seen any improvements for a long time. Mothra Leo has only been improved since its release. So Mothra Leo filled that void that King Caesar had, and now Batra has been meta for years, it seems, and Fire Rodan has always been good, but his buff last May, I believe it was May or April, made him way better. So we love to see the combination of that. So those three are meta everywhere. I'm sure if you've been playing the game, I don't really need to explain why those three are super, important. You see them everywhere, and I think they're just all around some of the three best units in the game, period. Routinely in the S tier on my tier list. So let's talk about some good sub-ins that you might want to use with them. I'm going to refrain from including members of the Bomb Squad in some of these, deck suggestions because, obviously you want to put meta archetypes with other units, or meta units and other archetypes, I should say, but I want you to experiment. I want you to understand why things are meta in the way that they are, right? So these are just my suggestions that aren't already super meta defining units, and if you want to mix and match, just do what you want. Let's start with Mecha King Ghidorah. Mecha King Ghidorah is a 7-cost flying unit with some decent damage. You could also put Des Ghidorah in here as well. I forgot to include him in there. I'm now just remembering Des Ghidorah exists, honestly. Sorry, Spence. King Ghidorah is fine. Not the best damage dealer, but a really good offensive unit, and paired with Batra, you're really going to get a lot of crazy damage out of him. Health is pretty decent too, so paired with Fire Rodan, he's going to stay alive for a really long time. Mecha King Ghidorah just kind of fits the flyer deck vibe, he's flying in the air, he's got a nice AoE, which is something that the 3 backbones of the 5-cost flyer archetype is lacking. There's not really a 5-cost flyer with AoE. Mecha King Ghidorah does, but the other 2 5-cost flyers that have piercing is Ultraman and Des Ghidorah, which are both fine. It's not like AoE, it's piercing, it's different, it's not a big splash, it's in a straight line. So if you're lacking AoE in your 5-cost flyer deck, or just your flyer deck in general, Mecha King Ghidorah could be useful. It's a guaranteed evolution from King Ghidorah to Mecha King Ghidorah on death. It is what it is. Not the most optimal unit these days, but certainly not a bad choice either. I think he just looks really cool with the rest of them, and his stats are pretty decent. Mothra Imago has been through the ringer, but recently is having a comeback. Mothra Imago does a lot of damage, and she's been in the game literally since day one. She's a lot of players' first 4 stars, especially really early on in the game, and actually even now, because you do the Kiryu missions when you first start, you're guaranteed to get a piece of Mothra. So a lot of players, especially those who've been playing for a long time, have a lot of pieces for her, and they're starting to really see her value in the high ranks. She has AoE. What am I saying? Mothra Imago has a really good AoE. It's very small, which is probably why I wasn't thinking about it. It's a really small AoE, but it does a lot of damage. It hits 10 times. Very, very solid. I like it a lot. She is an evolution, so if you're using Batra and Mothra Imago, I was going to say Mothra Leo, but Mothra Imago, which is Mothra 92, it does take a little bit longer to get her going, which is why a lot of people don't really throw her in. Even though she's less cost than the other 5-cost fighters, she's a 4. 2 evolution units, especially 2 flying evolution decks that are units and their larva, not generally the move, but she is really good. A lot of the whales report a lot of success with her, and a lot of people that are even free to play that have her at a high rank see a lot of success as well. She just doesn't have too much health, but her damage is phenomenal. Her damage is really good. She'll pair really, really well with Batra. She'll just rip through other characters. She's really, really strong. She's a really powerful card. Ultraman and Naranga. Ultraman is great. Ultraman has not seen a ton of play recently because he got nerfed a few months ago, and then there have been just a flood of really good units that have joined the game since he has come out. You know, we got the Ava, we got the Fourth Angel, we got GMK, we got Ava Unit 1, now we have Ava Unit 0. So after his nerf, he's not seeing a crazy amount of play, not like how he was, although he is an exceptionally powerful unit, right? His piercing hits from a mile away. He has Manila range, so he's sitting right outside of the enemy leaders. Usually, Ultima, I believe, will still hit him, but like G89 leaders will not, and a lot of players are running G89 leaders, so he'll hit them no problem. I believe in this video, my Ultraman gets a ton of free hits on the enemy leader just because he's not dealing with them. That's great. He's immune to stun. He does knockback. I believe when he spawns, he knocks characters back. He has some form of knockback. I don't exactly remember what it is that procs it. I think it's on his spawn. When he lands, he does knockback. I don't know, but he's immune to stuns, which is super important. And he has really good range, which is awesome. And he can fly and walk on land. So he can benefit from, you know, a character that gives boost to land units only, or flying units only. Or a leader, I should say, that gives those boosts. But Ultraman is really good. I think if this video was made like 4 or 5 months ago, I would have put Ultraman as a must-have in this list. I don't think in the current meta you need Ultraman. There are a lot of... The Explosion deck, for instance, is really beefy, and now that Ultraman's damage has been decreased, he's just tickling them. He's not doing the amount of damage that he used to be doing, but he's still a very good option. I personally really like Ultraman's kit in this game. I think he's phenomenal. You can see on the screen now, like, the G89 won't be able to hit him, but he's just going to get a bunch of free hits on the leader. Very powerful unit, great sniper. I think that Toad just needs to come and raise his stats back to what they were, and he'll see a lot of play again. Just at the moment, there's not a lot of people that are using him for whatever various reasons, especially with the other 3 flyers that are around. I think he might be in a worse state now than the other 3, just because of the 1 damage nerf. Naranga is a great anti-flyer character, and if you're running a flyer deck, it might be good to use him in your deck. When he spawns in, he's invisible, and when he's out of combat for a while, he will be invisible. The enemy actually in this game is using a Naranga. Naranga will always get the first hit on the flyers. He can stun a Leo, he can stun the Fire-Ran, he can stun the Batra, and actually he can stun lock GMK Godzilla, which we're seeing a lot of them in the meta. So if you want to successfully keep a lot of enemy units at bay, use Naranga, especially with the damage boost that he's received, the buff that Naranga has just gotten. He's seeing a lot of play. Naranga's all around a good pick now, but especially against enemy flying units, very optimal to use Naranga. And he's 4 cost, awesome. You're just not going to get the G89 boost with him if you decide to go with G89 as your leader. Megaguirus, the other 5 cost flyer that we have yet to mention, right? Or I think maybe I mentioned him earlier, but or her earlier. Like Megaguirus a lot. Incredibly good defensive unit. She's always kind of been like top of B, bottom of A for me, even since the beginning. She needs like maybe like a damage boost. I was gonna say boofed, damage boost or a health buff or something like that to make her something that's really good in the late game. She's really good on defense and on the shorter end of the field, but she has really poor mid game effectiveness. And when she's at the enemy leader, she's fine, but she's not really like too spectacular. Mothra Leo, at least, like, while the mid-range, like, you know, Mothra Leo is good all around because as that charge is going, anything that gets hit is just going to get like almost immediately killed, right? Batra, you know, in the midfield is still going to have that buff up, and Fire-Dan's going to have that heal that can drop when he dies. But Megaguirus, after she spawns in, doesn't really have too much going for her, aside from her stats. So I think with a small adjustment, maybe to her health or her damage, she'll be pretty successful going forward, but she's kind of just like the sub-optimal pick for the 5-cost flyers. She is easy to level up because she's a gold piece, so if you don't have, say, the levels on Leo or Fire-Dan or Batra, and you want to use the 5-cost flyers, you could put her in, but I think she's out of the 3 that we're talking about, the 3 flyers that we're talking about, and then Ultraman included, and even Mothra, I think Megaguirus on like maybe the lower end of that spectrum, especially these days. Still not terrible. King Caesar, still pretty good for damage, and if you're using primarily flyers, you need something on the ground to deal with some threats before they reach your leader, because, you know, while your 5-cost flyers are going to be able to rip apart a G89, they're not going to... I punched the mic. There's not really going to be anything stopping them from the GD9 from going straight to your leader, right? So that's kind of where also Anguirus and I guess Naranga also come in, where King Caesar's really good for rushing and pairing with Leo or Gigan 04, but you can pair King Caesar with Leo and have two really, really big hits of damage, either make contact with an enemy ground unit or the enemy's leader, or, you know, King Caesar hits a ground unit and Leo hits a flying unit. And normally if you deploy a Leo, your enemy will wait to counter it with Kamacuras. But if you do Leo on one side and King Caesar on the other, they kind of have to pick and choose who they're going to go after. And odds that they have a Gigan 04 in their deck and the Kamacuras are not incredibly high. So King Caesar works really, really well with Leo, especially as a distraction. And then Anguirus, what's to hate about Anguirus, man? He's 4 cost, he's amazing stats, all around really beefy unit, and he's going to help keep your flyers alive. He's going to help you keep Batra larva evolution alive. He can even help you keep the Mothra larva evolution alive as well. And if you don't want your Batra, your Ultraman to go down super fast, put Anguirus in. He is a bit slow. With the Fire Rodam speed boost, he can really, you know, make it across the map, but you're normally using him to tank damage, where otherwise you want your flyers or something like King Ghidorah to like really shine. Anguirus isn't there for damage, he's there to soak up the damage, so I like him a lot. I think he's probably the most optimal pick next to Naranga and Ultraman out of the units that I suggested here. But that's what I got for you guys today. That's the 5-cost flyer archetype and how to build like a deck around the flyers. And keep in mind, you don't really need to use the flyers with all the characters that I listed here. These are just some of the ones that I like. You don't need to use all the flyers in a deck together either. A lot of players, even my opponent here, shout out to PC Chorus is cringe, because when I tried to record this video, I was either losing to Wales or people were quitting on me. So you were one of the only guys that stuck it out through the whole match that didn't beat me. So you got put in the video. So shout out to you. Even Psychic Chorus is cringe is using Batra and Leo in a deck that is not primarily having flyers in it. The versatility of the 5-cost flyers for the abilities that they have and the cost for the abilities that they have, the cost of which you can place them on the field, and their stats per the cost is crazy. Okay? You don't have to use them in an all-flyer deck. The beauty of the 5-cost flyer archetype is that you can plug and play them into any deck. That is what has been making them meta. They work almost everywhere. They're very fairly priced pieces with crazy stats and crazy abilities. For what reason, I don't know. But the 5-cost flyers have been dominating the meta for a very, very long time. You do not have to dedicate a deck to them, although most competitive decks have a combination of 2 or 3 of them in those decks, almost 100% of the time. And the only time they don't is if it's like a whale who doesn't need these crazy effects because they have the levels to beat your ass anyway. Alright? The 5-cost flyers are not going anywhere. I don't suspect Toho's nerfing them anytime soon, considering they just recently buffed Batra. So I hope this has taught you something about the 5-cost flyers and how to build a deck around them or to take advantage of them in some capacity. Maybe you learned something, maybe you didn't, maybe I'm spouting things that you already know and you didn't even need this video. But if you liked it, let me know and I can get the next one to you ASAP whenever I feel like it. So I guess not ASAP, but just let me know if you want it and I'll give it to you. So that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will catch you all on the next one. Bye-bye.